Hello and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our monthly webinar covering the Aladtec functionality and system here. My name is Dave Snyder. I'm one of the support specialists with Aladtec, and I'm joined in the background with Nadine and Nancy to answer some of your questions. I'm sure we've talked to many of you before in the past, so hopefully you're going to pick up some ideas and thoughts through our webinar here today. Today's webinar, as most, are going to be about 45 minutes. Today we're going to focus on the setup area of access levels and work groups in your Aladtec system. The webinar is being recorded, as maybe most of you know, and it will be available to you and emailed a link to you after the fact. Since you've registered, you'll be emailed the link, and it'll be available in your help section of your system to reference again later. And you can certainly share that public link with any of your coworkers, or maybe to others who don't have Aladtec, and maybe you could just show them what some of the things that it could do for them as well. So we do have the questions panel there available to you in the GoToWebinar panel there. So make sure you ask your questions along the way regarding access levels and work groups to Nadine and Nancy, and they're going to save some nuggets for us to go over at the end of this broadcast here today. So what are we covering today? We are covering access levels and work groups, and we're going to be talking about the different aspects of that in terms of what does it mean to have scheduling authority, what you can do as a top-level admin to delegate some of these tasks, pieces of the system, to give some authority there on different pieces such as reporting and forms and things like that. There is a difference between viewing and editing, so we'll be explaining the differences there. And then this, of course, dictates what it is that your members can and can't do. And that includes regarding their own information, maybe in their own personal member profile, and other aspects of the system as well. And then we'll be talking about work groups, which is kind of the list of rules that your members are following in terms of what transactions they're able to submit, and what are some limits to talk about in terms of tracking part-timers and volunteers and such, too many hours in a week or a day, or however you want to track that, those types of limits to make sure that they don't go over, and what kind of warnings you get in that respect. And then beyond access levels and work groups, you can utilize these groups for other purposes in the system as well, beyond their actual definitions. We'll be able to use them as group messaging options, or sending out coverage alerts, sending messages in general, permissions on certain aspects like forms and things, and we'll be showing you all those different ideas and thoughts you can use them as well. We're going to cover as much as we can here today. If there's something specific to your service that we don't cover, make sure that you let us know, and we can speak with you, of course, one-on-one after our session today, and maybe even have a screen share with you to go through your different questions and certain aspects of your system that maybe we haven't covered here today. But go ahead and ask, because Nadine and Nancy will be here to help you do that. And then, of course, you can take care of our free support after the fact, and we can get into that. Keep in mind, there will be a survey at the end of today's webinar. We always love to hear your feedback, so if you could just hang on to the end and just fill out a quick survey for us and give us some thoughts and ideas of how it's going and how we can make things better, and if you have any ideas on subjects we can cover in the future as well. So what are we talking about here for access levels and work groups? How do we organize this information? We're going to just show you the different aspects of that. How do you assign roles to each people, each of your members? Everybody belongs to one access level and one work group. Who's in charge of the schedule, and what does that mean? What does that mean that they can do in regards to that schedule? And then how do you manage those different rules for people? Top level administrators, you'll notice, are the ones that are getting into the setup area, but there's even a workaround for that. If you want some people to get in there, we'll show you how to do that. And how do you make this easier to manage all your groups and different departments and things of people within the system in terms of notifications and messaging and permissions and things like that. So let's get over to our system here and take a quick look here. Let me make sure everything's all set here. Yep, so we're in our training system here. I'm kind of blowing it up here so you can have a better view of it here, but we're in our system as our administrator, Joe Burns. And what we're gonna be, like I said, focusing on here is in the setup area. if you're a top level admin or have access to it, your setup link is in the upper left here under your system name and this little down arrow, the setup link here. And just to show you quickly what we're going to be referring to here in the member database, everybody, like I said, belongs to one access level and one work group, as you'll see from our list here. And people have different roles here that they can be part of. If I hover over Dave here and just look at him quickly, right in the upper right here is everybody's access level, and you can choose from your list. And then your work group is dictating the rules that we'll talk about here in a minute as well. So let's go to our setup area and see what this means here and just get right into it here when in regards to access levels. When your system started, everybody had, there are two default access levels in the system. There's basically all the power, right? Your top level administrators. There's nothing that the top level can't do. They can view, they can edit, they can change, they can approve their own time off. They get the ultimate power in the system. And then the other end of the spectrum, of course, is just regular member access, which is basically kind of the other end of the spectrum here. They can basically just look at their own stuff. They can't make any changes. And, you know, maybe you give them a little more authority on making personal changes and things like that. But those are the two defaults here. And then, of course, as your system evolves and you want to delegate some authority to other groups, captains, supervisors, schedulers, and such, let's close that. I forgot to turn off my notifications there, sorry. Let's do that. So we have the list of people here, and you'll see that there's different reasons for different levels of authority here. So what we can do here is edit any of these access levels or add a brand new one as needed as well. For your top level administrators, if I go to edit that access level here, you'll notice and there's just the one setting here in regards to security, and that's just in regards to how long before the system automatically times out for inactivity. You can set it for each of these levels for as little as 10 minutes or as much as 24 hours. So you may have different levels of timeout here, options for each person. But in the top level, it's just that. Now for members, we'll just look at that as a little basic level here. We'll look at the edit the access level, and we'll go through the different elements of what's available here to each of these levels. All the settings will be listed here, and it's just a matter of checking the box of what you want that role to be in charge of, so to speak. And you'll notice everything in the system is basically, you know, in general, it's a scheduling software, right? You know, so everything is basically based off scheduling authority. And you'll see how this relates to other elements of what people can do down the line here as well. So really what we're talking about here is if you're in charge of the schedule, you basically have everything that is involved with that schedule. If you're in charge of the schedule, you get everything that comes along with it. You have access to edit that schedule, which means you can add and remove people from any shift on any given day for that schedule. It gives you full access to the hourly editor for that schedule and lets you set repeats and rotations, delete things, and the change requests. It means that you can approve or deny time off, trades, signups, extra hours, all requests that funnel through that schedule, and the people that have qualified to work that schedule, you get to be part of that as the admin for that schedule. And you can send this, you can see, you can post events, notes, and coverage alerts and things. Now the list of schedules are here based on what schedules are in your service here on your system. And if you have different levels of authority for different areas here, you can certainly dictate exactly what that level has the ability to do. You'll notice here we have one level here called supervisors for Hamilton. And if I open that up, what I'm showing here is that role for supervisors has authority over the Rocky Road Station, the Hamilton Station, and the Franklin Station, but none of the others. They're not the ones on dispatch, they're not the administrators, they're not the ones doing Carver and Southeast and Northeast and so forth. They're in charge of just these three schedules and the people that are part of that schedule. So when they go to edit the schedule and they go in the hourly editor, the only list they're going to see are these schedules that they're in charge of, that they have the authority over. Now, you may be asking, well, how do I separate that out? We've had that request come from different services of, you know, maybe, I want the time off request to ultimately go up to top levels. I only want the top level to actually approve time off, but I still want the supervisor to edit the schedule day by day. We understand that. We've heard those requests, and those kinds of things are being reviewed, and for future enhancements. But at the moment, if you're in charge of the schedule, you get everything that come with it. And the axiom is, of course, with great power comes great responsibility. So if you have the power to do it, you have the power to do it. So it's just part of the responsibility of that particular schedule and authority. Now, there is the piece of the schedule that comes down where it says, I want them to be able to edit the schedule, of course, but I don't want them approving their own time off. I do want, if I'm approving an request for everybody else, I don't want to be able to approve my own. So you do have that option here of a checkbox to prevent the user from approving their own time off, so that it goes up the chain and perhaps to your top level and your other admins to approve those types of requests. And that also goes for what our extra hours feature too, if you're familiar with that. I'll explain that in a little more detail, but that's basically just hours that people are putting in for shifts that have happened in the past, like overtime shifts. Went to a training class yesterday, I went to court, and so forth, or I worked overtime on my shift yesterday and I want to get credit for that. This is the feature that allows you to do that. So you have the ability to also say those admins can approve their extra hours requests as well. So as I mentioned, when we start scrolling down here to the next sections here, there's the work schedule views. So what we're talking about now is viewing versus editing. You could have a member level here that says they have no authority over the schedule, but what you can do is say, well, they can at least see it, right? Your members could at least maybe see all schedules if you wanted to do that. You could say view all schedules, and that's normally the case by default. You're letting your members see who else is working on other departments, other stations, other areas. It's just a matter of viewing the schedule through the schedule views. If you wanted to restrict it a little further than that, you certainly could. You could certainly say those members can only view schedules that they're allowed to work or edit. Well, what does that mean? Well, what that means is that basically what schedules that are qualified to work based on their member profile. So that's what's dictating what schedules they see, whatever ones they're allowed to work on as a qualified individual to work on that schedule. They'd only see those on the big calendar here. Or you can even go a little further than that. You can even say, I don't want my members to see anything. I don't want members to see any other schedule or any other piece of any other calendar area out there. I only want them to see the My Schedule page, which is just their own information, their own schedules, events that apply to them, open shifts that apply to them to sign up, and so forth. So they wouldn't even have this link of the schedule views. They'd only see this link for the My Schedule page. That's what this option is referring to as well. And then the extra piece on top of that, do you want them to see extra hours and time off? So in some cases on some services, I don't, if people, call in sick, or they're on FMLA, or they're on military leave, or whatever it happens to be, maybe you don't want your members to actually see those other people's time off. You can actually choose to have that turned on or off for your members to say whether they can see that time off or see the extra hours on the calendar. You could have them just see the schedules shifts alone, or you could have them turned on and off. Typically, time off and these are turned on. And then we're getting into more editing options here down the road here. Let's go back to a scheduler here and see if there's some more options here. So we get down to the editing authority. Here's another section. So now we're just piecemealing basically and just delegating piece by piece of the section of the service system here, what they're allowed to edit. And we can just say this role is allowed to edit the home page, which means they can go to the home page editor and work with that HTML editor and make postings, updates, whatever, update the instructions on the home page, or basically make it look like what you want. This is what gives them that authority for that. Next is storage. That is going to refer to this section here, which allows them to upload and add and remove files and organize them into folders into your storage area. And if you're not taking advantage of that, I strongly encourage you to do so. This is a great location for your members to access all sorts of information. It's basically a library archive of almost anything you can think of, manuals and policies and procedures. And this allows your member to add those items if need be. Normally, it's just read only in here. Your membership, if they don't have edit authority, they would be able to just click on any of these items and just download it and read it. But the storage area here allows that editing authority. Another part of the schedule here is events. And you'll notice on some of these things, when I click on it, you'll get an extra options of what does that mean. You can add events onto your calendar, which is those brown indicators on the calendar. And what we're saying here, can this role add events for all schedules or only for the schedules which has scheduling authority? So again, you're triggering off what the list is up here to what they can do for events in this case. Can they only add events for schedules that they have scheduling authority? They can't add an event for, say, special event or training, or an overtime event or an on-call clinic, but just for events that apply specifically to their own schedules. So if you need to narrow that down, you can, or just allow them to add events for everybody. Required messages, again, same idea. How, who can they send required messages to for all schedules or just people under their authority? The required messages are up here under the Home tab. This is an internal message you may be familiar with that allows the posting of basically a splash page for your members to see the next time they log in. It's an internal message. It's not going to get pushed to email or text or anything. It's just a required message that splashes out there when they log in, and it forces them to acknowledge that they've read and acknowledged those messages. So that's what's driving this here. And here's that extra piece that I was mentioning about in terms of, it used to be that top level administrators were the only people that would be able to get into the kitchen here, into the setup area here. But we found that there was a lot of schedulers out there and supervisors that need to kind of come in and adjust publishing options and maybe add some positions and make some adjustments to schedules or even add a new one. And they needed to always, go up through the top level admin in order to do that. And it was kind of a pain in some cases where they weren't so readily available. So what we've done here is added the ability for you as a top level admin to basically give another level of authority, another access level, the ability to get into the setup area, so that they can get in here and make changes to what they need to. If they need to add a time off or a time type or change a rule in the work groups or whatever it happens to be. The only thing that role would not be able to get at is the access levels themselves. They don't have the power to add and remove people to what kind of authority they have. So just that one piece would be missing, but they can get to the rest of it here. So that could be handy if you haven't seen that before. So you can, and then that really falls into the schedulers that say, can't approve their own time off. That question always comes up too. I'm a top level, but I need them to not approve their own time off. Well, maybe you knock them down to a scheduler role or something like that, where you basically give them all other access. You could probably just check everything here, and they would still have the ability to get into the system setup area here to make those changes if necessary. Forms, this is allowing this role to create and own forms. Now, what people get a little bit confused on this, what this allows them to create, it should say, create and own new forms. So if you have that ability checked here, you know that if you've been using forms, every form kind of lives within its own world in terms of access for itself. Excuse me. Every form has its own set of settings where you set in there who the owner is and who the editor of that form is. That's not controlled through here. All we're doing here is allowing this role to have the ability to create new forms, basically, and have the ability to own forms. You would still need to go into each form under their settings and designate that role to be able to own it or edit it as necessary for any existing form. But you can certainly set up for this role to create new ones here if you wish. Some of you may be using the availability page. It's either you use it or don't kind of a thing. There's an availability screen here that allows you to just kind of see a big snapshot of everybody's availability as they've entered it into the system. You know, letting you know what days and hours they're available to work or unavailable to work or prefer to work. So that, you know, some of you follow that along in the hourly editor. Some of you might be using this availability page, and that's all that's showing here. So kind of like up here where it says that they can view extra hours and time off, here's where we're saying, can we have this role see everybody else's availability? Reporting, that gets important as well, because there's a lot of detail in reporting and a lot of sensitive information possibly. So the reports tab here is showing, you know, payroll reports, time clock reports, even the system log, which shows all activity within the system. So what we're doing here is basically designating what this role has the ability to see under that tab. Can they see all reporting for all members, or only for members which they have scheduling authority? Again, they can see the reports for everybody under their authority, but not all the others, right? Maybe they just need to keep that separate from in terms of departments and things like that. They're just in charge of their own stuff and they don't need to see the rest. And then there's a separate checkbox here for the system log itself, because like I said, the system log, if you're familiar, is a record of all activity and changes within the system. If you make a change to somebody's member information and you change their emergency contact information, or whatever sensitive information you might be storing there, that information is recorded in the system log here under reporting, and they'd be able to get in there and see the details of every change that's ever happened from everybody here. So that's why this is a separate box all by itself. Do you want to allow them to see the ultimate audit trail, if you will, of all the activity in the system or not? Top level, of course, has all these already built in, but you can designate that to be separate if you wish and have them see that. Discussions is just in regards to just admin privileges. Do you want them to be an admin in your discussions area? It's as simple as, it's just basically a forum moderator, if you will. You can, you know, add new discussion groups and categories and thoughts and strings and whatever. That just allows you to see that. And then there's options here to, you know, full admin privileges or just start new topics. It's pretty self-explanatory there. Time clock admin, if any of you are using our time clock feature, this is just basically who's in charge of the time cards, who's in charge of reviewing all the cards in the bin and seeing if they're early or late, you know, and making adjustments if somebody forgot and somebody let something along those lines. So is this admin also in charge of the time clock records for who they have scheduling authority over? Again, based on the people that are set as part of their scheduling authority at the top. You see how this is related to so much. Everything's driven from scheduling authority as to what you can do with the rest of the system here too. And then there's time clock kiosks. So your managed kiosk page, if you're using authorized kiosks and different machines for people to punch in and out, do you want to allow them to, you know, create new ones or fix ones that maybe get broken with antivirus interference, things like that? Do you want to be able to set up the secure time clock kiosks and manage those? Member database. This is controlling everything within the member database here and the different elements. Can they see it? Can they edit it? Can they edit their own? Can they edit everybody else's? That's basically what it boils down to. This is the driver here that's not exactly obvious, but if you can view member information, right? If you can go into the member database and you can see member information, if I show this here, right? You can see everything including phone and email. So what this drives is the ability to send a message. If they can see it, they can use it. And that's the point of that, is they can just, you know, check whoever and send a message to whoever they need to, because they're seeing the phone and email along with everything else. They can see all the other data for each member as well. So it's a kind of an all or nothing thing. Can they view that information? Some services turn that on for their members because they want them to use the send message feature to be able to send messages from the system. That's fine. You just need to turn that on, and then do you do it for all members again or only the ones under your authority? View hidden fields. There is a hidden field option within the member database configurator. If you have hidden fields, can this role see those hidden fields or not? It's not specific to the person. It's not member driven, like I can see my hidden field, but I can't see anybody else's. It's all or nothing. Can you see the hidden fields or not for your members? Can you edit data for other members? Right? Can you edit the members except for your TLAs? Again, can you not only get into send a message and do all that, but can you hover over a member and go into edit member and be able to make changes? Changes to qualifications, changes to general information, anything in regards to that profile. This gives you the ability to do that, to edit that information. And if you don't check that, then this other option pops up to just edit your own. So you don't want them editing everybody else. You want just to edit their own, as it says, if not allowed by the above settings already. In most cases, a lot of services really only allow your members to change of course, their username and their messaging information and notifications. Members know what their phone number is and who their provider is and what their email is. And if any of those changes happen, you allow them to make those changes, and that's fine. Notifications, same thing. They get to choose for themselves how often they get pinged for everything, right? They get to turn on and off their own notifications. So that's what this is driving right here. And of course, they can change their own username and password to get that reset too. Or do you want to let them just have free-for-all on their own profile? Do you want them to be able to update their certifications, their emergency contact information, their general information? They wouldn't change any of the high-level stuff up here. That would be grayed out for them. But down here, in terms of everything basically from general information down, they'd be able to make changes to themselves, but not anybody else. All right, and then the last thing here is allowing changing of the member database configuration. This basically is kind of like a form editor, only can they make changes to the configurator or the My Info profile itself. Can they get into there, and it's just like a form where they would be able to go into the configurator and add and remove fields as needed, right? You can just do that just like a form and make, rearrange and do things like that. So that's just basically, can they have the admin access to make changes to the profile if necessary? Otherwise, it's the top level that does that. And then, of course, your security time off for inactivity. So as you can see, we have different roles of access for different levels of authority. Like I said, we have different supervisors for different departments. So you can see the dispatcher is in charge of their dispatcher schedules and maybe some events and some other things. So you can, basically organize it any way you wish. And once you have them all set up in here, then you just assign those roles to your members. One thing that comes up pretty often here is the ability to just, what if I have somebody that works in, for the county and they're in charge of the payroll, they're not really part of the schedule, they're not in the system on a regular basis, they're not really part of it, but they still maybe need access to it to get the data out. How do I set it up where the person, basically has a login, but I don't want them, looking at the schedule. I don't want them punching in and out. I don't want them filling out forms. I don't want them doing anything except going under reports and going to their own report that they need and do an export to get it out of there. That's what this is. So if we expand this out just to show you, basically it's a big blank slate. They don't have authority and they have no need to actually see the schedules. All we're doing is turning off everything except reporting. And they would just have access to only reports, and that's what they just go in there and do, and it kind of focuses their attention on that, and they would just need maybe a few minutes training to show them where that is and how to set that up and export it. And they just do that for a couple minutes every couple weeks. So you can give them a login and have them have limited ability to see what they can see. And you can add as many access levels here as you wish. Okay, well, I hope we're getting some good questions out there. We're going to review those here in a few minutes, but of course, I'm going to move on to the other end of the spectrum here, and that's, of course, our work groups. So on kind of the other end here is work groups. Now, what this is I like to explain it as This is the set of rules that people follow on what they can do while they're interacting with the system. So it's not necessarily authority over anything. This is just what kind of transactions can that member submit for approval, basically. Can they submit their availability? Can they sign up for shifts? Can they trade their shifts? What are the rules of a trade? Can they, do I need to track their work limits? Do I need to make sure they're not working too many hours? And you can see here we have different groups of people for different sets of rules for different reasons. So we have a default set here for any new system or any new member that comes in, but you can certainly assign any of these items to anybody, and we'll just look at the full-time group here and see what that group has the ability to do. So again, we have different sections here for the different types of transactions, and we'll just walk through them here and what all this means. Availability, simple as that. Can they submit when they're available to work, and what categories can they pick from? Unavailable, available, preferred. And you can simply, it's just on or off simple idea here. So everything that you're seeing here is basically driven by the My Schedule page. Okay, so you'll notice that these same items here are the same items that you're going to see here listed as the legend here on the My Schedule page. Here's our, can I submit extra hours? Can I submit time off, trades, open shifts, availability? So when your member is interacting with their own calendar and inputting whatever they need to on here, it's all driven by what it says as part of their work group over here. So here's the yellow availability. Can they submit their availability, yes or no? And then what categories can there be? And you could you limit it to say, hey, I don't care about when you're not available or what you prefer to work. I just want to know when you're working, when you're available to work. And usually that follows a cutoff. Normally for, like, we're in the month of November now, everybody has to submit their availability for December so that we can plan ahead, right, to plan next month's schedule. And how long do I want to give you in order to do that? Let's just say like the 20th. So members have until the 20th of this month to submit their availability for December. And what happens at midnight of the 20th, which would be the night of the 19th, the start of the 20th of the month, which would be midnight. After that point, their availability is then locked for December, where they can't make any changes. And that gives the admin, of course, the 10 days at the end of the month to take that information and build the schedule for December without any changes or interruptions. So this is just a cutoff that says, hey, you got till the 20th to do it, and then it's done, and I'm going to do my piece to get December in order. And you can have that custom cutoff or a certain day of the month or no deadline at all. Extra hours is basically as simple as that. I kind of explained that in general before. It's just the ability to submit what's a gray item here where they'd be able to submit an extra hour for a shift that has not been part of the regular schedule. It's not a blue shift. They weren't scheduled for it. It's over and above what they were scheduled to work. So extra hours are submitted in the past, and they would just be able to submit where they were, why they were there, and what would the reason be, and add notes and submit those extra hours. That's what this is giving them the ability to do, and it's as simple as it makes it very easy for your admins to just simply approve or deny that request, and it automatically adds to their hours and their totals and the reporting, and they get credit for it, right? So that's the whole point of that. And then what you'll see here for each of these requests that require maybe require an approve or deny, does it need to go through an admin for approval? And that admin approval is, again, based on the schedule. So when they come in and submit an overtime request, say for the police station, it goes to the police station admin, whoever's the schedulers that have the authority over that police station schedule. And then it's driven by each of those. So in some cases, maybe you don't require it. Maybe they just, hey, if they submit it, it's done deal. They're going to get it automatically. I don't even need to see or know about it. That's fine. But this is where you're saying require approval if need be. It needs to go through somebody to get in front of somebody's eyes and manually approve it. Same with signups. Can they sign up for shifts? That's as simple as that. Can they turn on these open shifts and see what shifts are available for me to sign up for it? And that's where they're going to find that here. Can they do it or not? So that's just turned on. And then maybe you don't want them to get ahead of themselves, restrict it to the current month, the next couple months, or you could say, X amount of days in the future they can sign up for shifts so that they're not going out in 2022 and grabbing everything that's out there. And again, does it require approval or not? Time off, can they or can't they? That's as simple as it gets. Nothing stops a member from trying, right? It's all on the admin to approve or deny that request. So this is just saying, can they submit time off or not? And then they would, submit time off, pick a choice as to what kind of time off it is, and it goes through for an approval. There is no require approval on time off. It has to go through an admin for that. Trades, a little more expansive rules on trades. Can they trade their shifts? And then what types of shifts can they trade? Or what types of trades can there be? Can they just give away their shift? Hey, I don't want to work on Saturday. Who wants it? I just want to give my shift away. That's a one-way trade. There's no IOU attached with that, but on a shift swap there is, and we're going to figure out what those days are right now. I work for you, you work for me, and we're going to figure out those dates, and then it'll go to an admin for approval if required. Right, so there's those two different types. Maybe your part-timers aren't allowed it, or the volunteers aren't allowed to trade at all, and you can certainly turn that off. Here's a rare option, but it can be used. Allow trading of unpublished shifts. If you have your schedule unpublished in the future, but you still want to allow your members to trade those shifts, even though they can't really see them on the main calendar, this is what's going to allow them to do that. And like I said, it's a rare option, but maybe you want to allow them to do that kind of in the background. They can still trade even though they can't really see them. They'd be available to you through, say, like the trades page. And then again, kind of like signups, how far in the future can they go in order to request those trades? Maybe you don't want to get them. You don't want them to get ahead of themselves, like I said. Swap shifts must be repaid within a certain time range. This comes up actually quite often, and usually within the same pay period. People like it when it's a wash, right? If they're swapping their shifts, I work for you, you work for me, who cares if it's in the same pay period? It's a wash, right? Especially if it's the same length. I work for your 12-hour and you work for my 12-hour. We're going to get the same amount of hours. It doesn't matter, and it's been restricted. Great. Then it's in the same pay period, and the reporting and payroll is never the wiser, really. It's all the same wash there. So that restriction is used quite a bit, but maybe it's a different requirement in your service, and you can certainly set it up to be, again, don't swap, tomorrow's shifts for January of 2022. I don't want people doing that. Maybe you make it within the same year or a custom range of your own. And you could get really more restrictive in terms of what can be traded exactly. Same schedule. Does it have to be station 1 for station 1? Does it have to be the Southwest station for the Southwest station? Maybe you don't want your guys, swapping for shifts across town or across state lines or borders, or, we have services that are nationwide. You don't want people swapping on schedules that are like way out of bounds. You can certainly restrict it to that, and you can restrict it to the position, right? Captain for captain, firefighter for firefighter, EMT for EMT. It has to be the exact name of the position. Most people leave it open, and allow your admins to make that choice of approving and denying if a medic wants to trade for a ladder position or whatever it happens to be, you can open that up. But if you need to restrict it, you can certainly do that. I would just note here that the more restrictions you put in place, the more you're going to get people coming to you saying, why can't I trade with this guy? Why can't I trade? Why can't I trade? It happens all the time. And there's always a rule involved with it, right? There's always a reason. So maybe leave it a little more open-ended so you can review those trades and allow it if necessary. Same shift length. So that's in regard to, how long the shift is. 12 hour for 12 hour. It has to be the same shift length on either side of the trade for those swaps. They can't trade an 8 hour for a 12 hour because that's not fair, right? Or whatever, so we're just restricting the length or the time. So if you have like a dispatcher a group of folks, and it has to be a morning shift for a morning shift. It has to be from 7 to 3, has to trade for another 7 to 3. They can't trade for a 3 to 11. That's what this is restricting by time. It may be the same length, and that's fine, but it's not the same time. So that's something you can be specific about here as well. And then, of course, does it require approval? Work limits, I know I'm kind of rolling on here. I just want to make sure to get through all the elements here. Work limits in the shaded area here is where you're tracking basically the amount of time that they're spending on their schedule itself. This looks at a total hours and adds it up and decides whether you want to track and make sure that they're not working too many in a row, contiguous. Restrict, make sure if they're working more than 48 hours a row, what happens? Does it just show them a warning? Maybe they're signing up for 6 days in a row, and it's just going to show them a warning and say, hey, you're working more than 48 hours in a row, right? And then they could just okay through it. That's just a warning. Or does it need to go up the chain? Does it need to go through an admin to make sure that they can breach that work limit? Or do you have maybe a document or a policy or a union contract or something that says absolutely not, no, never, it can never exceed 48 hours in a row. And in those cases, not even the admin can override it. The system will literally, it's a hard stop. It will never let it happen. It will never let a person work more than 48 hours in a row, and the admin can't even override it if they try. And that'll come up as a warning in a light box too. Most people put it as the admin approval just so it gets in front of their eyes. So this is hours in a row. This is hours over a range. Limit the total hours within a pay period, a day range, a week, a month, whatever your specifics happen to be. Most of the time it's, say, hey, if they're going to hit overtime over 40 in a week, I want to know about it. Right? 40 hours in a week, I got to know, and my day starts at 7. So from the start time of your week, most people's weeks start on Sundays or Mondays, from 7 to 7 that week. If it's within 40 hours, it's gonna ping you and let you know that somebody's going over. And this third one here is minimum time off. Do they have to have a break between shifts? This comes up in terms of like healthcare and maybe some fire stations and such. If they work 48, they got to have 24 off. So you could put that in here and says, hey, if they, once they stop a shift, they can't come back on shift for another 8 hours. So this is just checking against those folks to make sure that they're getting that break. There is an overtime rule here, and you might be using this in terms of the reporting aspect of the system. If you have a 2-week pay period, this comes up a lot. You don't want the report to generate overtime based on 2 weeks, right? 40 hours over 2 weeks, that would be a lot of overtime. You want it to calculate overtime based on 1 week so that it represents each week individually, right? And the reporting, this will just accurately report those overtime rules for you. Within the report itself. It will just calculate based on 1 week at a time, based on your start time of a week, and anything over 40 in a week range would then be labeled or calculated as an overtime, and that's in your reporting. I'm sure you're familiar with this, where you'd be able to just edit on the filter, and you're not calculating the overtime based on the range of the report, like 2 weeks it says here. You're using the overtime as defined in the work groups, so that it takes 1 week at a time. It looks against that person and sees what group they belong to and calculates the overtime based on what that work group sets. All right, so we have different sets of rules for different sets of people, and in some cases we have the same set of rules for different sets of people. We have ABC shifters here. This happens quite a bit in firehouses and such, where people say, hey, I only care about my A shift guys or my B shift guys. I don't care, if B shift is moving around, and I don't want to be notified about that. So what this allows us to do basically when we set up these separate groups here is it puts these people in separate groups so that we can use those groups for different reasons, not just the definition of the rules. Like I said, the rules are exactly the same for A, B, and C. They're all the same exact settings, but now we can set people and assign them to A, B, and C shift based on their profile here, right? Where did I have access level work groups? So we just, once we go through and assign people A shift, B shift, C shift, now we can utilize that information for other filter options throughout the system. And it could be something as simple as a message. If I go in here now and it puts I sort by this column and it puts all my B shifters together, now I can just go bang, bang, bang. And now I'm sending a message to just the B shift people by utilizing that group designation. And you can even filter on that, right? You'll see that I have some of that options right here. I've already set up a shared filter that says, just show me the B shifters, right? Let's see if I can show you that here. So I'm just using a filter that says, look at everybody's work group, right? Use the attribute of a work group and show me that if it is B shift, and then save it. And I save it as B shift members. And then I apply that, and now it just hides everybody else in the background, and here we are. Now I got all my B shifters, and I can just go bang and send a message to your B shifters. That also is handy in that report I was just showing you here. Any report, you'd be able to draw in exactly what work group they belong to. We can bring in that member information of work group and even filter on that again too. So that's where you can say, hey, just show me all the people that are part-time work groupers. Or we can say, and save those as custom reporting for later. So we're just utilizing the information that's already pre-saved within the system to use it for other reporting and messaging options within the system. So it makes it easier to find who we need. And that really draws down towards when we're looking at, say, back to the member database here, sorry. When you're looking at when I was mentioning, the captains and schedulers of said A, B, and C shift. If we, let's just look at everybody here. Let's see if I can find we'll just use our friend Aladtec here. Now, if I'm an administrator and say like this guy is the administrator of just A shift people, what he has the ability to do now into the notification section here is he can go down to his notify me about other members. We get this a lot where it says, I'm getting all these messages from B and C groups that I don't need to see them. Yeah, I can back up that guy and that's fine, but I don't want to be overwhelmed with too many messages from other groups that I don't really have necessarily a need to know about kind of situation. So what you could do is you can set up your notifications to say, notify me about based on work group, I only want to see the A shift notifications. And if they come from B or C shift, I don't get notified, right? And I just, decide for yourself what method you want those messages to come to you in and what groups you want them to be part of or come from. Right, so that's the biggest feature to come from separating out those people into those different work groups. What else can you do with the work groups? You can certainly set different levels of authority, or like I said, messaging in forms. Maybe you have a different form for different groups of people. Maybe you want to set up a uniform gear request form and you have different gear for different groups or whatever it is. So again, in the settings or notifications or wherever it is, you'll see this kind of the similar setup from everywhere here. You can set the permissions of who can submit this particular form based on access level or work groups, right? You have the different levels here, work group, individuals, or access levels. I'm sure many of you have seen this choice. Again, you can set up a form to just be for your A shifters or just for your garage mechanics or whatever it is. So utilize those groups in what they're for in the different sections or departments or shifts to be able to segment out exactly that group of people for different reasons. In this case, we're just deciding what their permissions are on that particular form. Or We mentioned messaging, or you can even direct a message, say like a required message from, like I mentioned, that internal message where you can choose who's going to be the recipient of this particular message. And you can point it towards individual names, but you can certainly point it toward a group as well. So you'll see that different designation throughout the system to be able to choose those different groups or access levels. Hey, I want all dispatch supervisors to see this. And that way you don't have to remember their names. People come and go, right? That's the point, is if you're assigning people to a group, everything involved with that group is already built in. You don't have to remember individual names. As people come and go from the system, you assign them to the group they belong to, and they get everything covered. So that'll be really handy to utilize that different aspect there. So you can set up, and you can, or you'll see you can organize these and put them in whatever order you want. You can set a different default. You can add as many as you want, and even if there are the same set of rules, you can just add as many as necessary and separate people out. Okay, I know we're kind of rolling right along, getting towards the top of the hour here. I'm going to just kind of pause this for a moment, and I'm going to take a look at any questions that might be out here so we can cover a couple of those. Let's see here. Let's see. Got a question here from M. Boone. I would like to change that time off request and extra hours request automatically approved for me as top level. I would like to change that time off request. Oh, I think you're asking, you want to be able to, yeah, I think what you're asking there in terms of a top level, can you change it where you are not approving your own time off and extra hours? If that's the case, then that's what you wanted. You want to go back to the access level that I mentioned here. Let's see if I turn that on here just a second. So what you basically, you wouldn't be a top level administrator. That there isn't anything I can do within the top level administrator role. I mean, that's just who they are. It comes with all authority that comes with it. So maybe maybe you have other people that are top level administrators, and you designate yourself or whoever into that role, and like I mentioned, have them be able to get into the system setup where they basically have the ability to do everything a top level can do, essentially, except for access levels. And then in that role, you make sure you prevent the user from approving their own extra hours or time off. Or I have seen, I don't really recommend this option, but some people have two member profiles. One is a top level administrator profile, and one is just a regular member profile. Now, I hesitate to even say that because we're trying to move away from that, because what that does is add to your subscription, because active members in the member database count towards your subscription rate. So if you're under a certain amount, or maybe you don't care, that's fine. But that is certainly one way around it. But we've tried to eliminate that need for that using these other options that I've mentioned here in the system. Okay, let's see what else. Tina's asking, can you allow all user to see members' photos? Oh, interesting. Okay. I think that would go towards the setting where it says, can they? God, that would have to be what triggers? I got to think it would be triggered by viewing member information. I got to think that that's it. So it's kind of an all or nothing thing with the member information. They either can see everybody or they can't, which means they can see their email and their text and that information. So when that happens, they'd be able to go in to see the members and then see their pictures here along with it. I think that's what drives that. That's a good question though. I don't think I've heard that one before. I'll double check on that one. I'm pretty sure that's probably what it is, because if, say if Dave here is just a member, I'll just pretend to be Dave here and see what he can see. So yeah, Dave's not going to see a members database here, right? Dave Anderson, he's just a regular. He's not going to see member data, but he would have to have that member view information turned on in order to see that data and the pictures along with it, I would assume. Yep. Okay. Let's see. Quick question here related to forms. Is there a way to restrict members from seeing forms that other members have submitted? That's by default. If you just have people submitting forms without the ability to see reporting or modifications, they would only see their own submissions. They would not see anybody else's by default. I'm hoping that answers that question. Okay, we've really kind of covered the gamut here. So really deep in terms of access levels and work groups and seeing different ideas. I hope everybody has picked up on something there. If there's something I haven't covered here, please make sure that you let me know. And of course, let's see what next month will bring. We're going to be talking about time clock management and our integration options, which is very exciting. So these are kind of add-ons to the system, time clock and integration options. There's lots of choices that are being expanded on in terms of integration, a lot of incident reporting softwares. If you're using image trend or emergency reporting or other ones out there, we're always expanding on those integration options. So you're going to want to hear about all those different ideas there, and what it does is just basically allow Aladtec to be your source for those information and feed the information automatically on a regular basis over to those other programs to eliminate double entry and errors and create those efficiencies. And of course, time clock, tracking your members, being able to clock in and out on the system as well. And we're trying to expand on coming up with more custom reporting. We have some exciting payroll things coming down the road here for enhancements on the system. So I think next month is going to provide a lot of information on that, and we hope to be able to show you a lot of that as well. So you're going to want to see that, and of course, as we have every month, our webinar will be displaying all the different elements here. So make sure you can go into the documents area of your portal over here. There's a I think in the chat, there's a link to register for next month's webinar. And don't forget about the survey to hang on afterwards to help us out with some feedback on these webinars. We'd love to hear more about that. Thank you, Nadine and Nancy, for taking care of all the questions out there. And thank you, Jesse, for always being there for tech support and otherwise. And if you have anything you want to talk about, that's when you call us, right? You give us a call, email. Don't forget our chat bubble there that's in the help section there. You can just click on that and start typing away and start talking to us through that, which is pretty cool. So we hope you're enjoying yourself out there and being safe. And we will talk to you again next month. Thanks, everybody.